It started like a scene from a drama. Blue skies, children laughing in backyards, and a lake shimmering in the afternoon sun. But beneath the calm surface, a storm was brewing. For weeks, Karen, the self-appointed queen of the HOA, had been watching her neighbor with sharp eyes, searching for the smallest reason to pounce. That day, she thought she had found it. The man she targeted wasn't loud, nor careless. He was the landowner, the person who had quietly leased the area to the community years ago, never once interfering in their daily lives. Yet Karen convinced herself that he was trespassing on her HOA property. She dialed 911 with the confidence of someone who believed she ran the world. As the sirens approached, families peeked through curtains. To them, it looked like an ordinary dispute. But to the man at the center of it all, it was the beginning of a turning point. He held the deed to the very land Karen was guarding so fiercely, and soon everyone would know the truth. When the police arrived, Karen stood tall at the edge of the cul-de-sac, her bright suit reflecting her determination. She waved her arms dramatically, pointing at the man near the lake as if he were an intruder. Her voice carried across the neighborhood, "He's breaking HOA rules. He doesn't belong here." The officers, trying to maintain neutrality, asked questions. But Karen had rehearsed her lines. She described him as disruptive, someone who refused to follow community standards. Neighbors whispered from porches, unsure whether to nod along or stay silent. Meanwhile, the man listened calmly, not interrupting her theatrics. His silence wasn't weakness, it was strategy. Because in his briefcase sat documents that would dismantle her claims in seconds. He knew the law was on his side, but he also knew timing mattered. For now, he let Karen paint her picture. The more she exaggerated, the sharper the contrast would be when the truth emerged. By now, the neighborhood was buzzing. Children stopped their games, couples leaned over fences, everyone waiting for what came next. Karen, fueled by attention, grew bolder. She accused the man of damaging HOA-owned land and hinted at fines, but that was the moment he finally spoke. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried weight. "Are you sure this is your land, Karen?" The officers turned their heads toward him, curious. He pulled a folded set of papers from his briefcase and held them with steady hands. "Because according to the county records, this lake, this road, and every inch of ground we're standing on belongs to me." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Karen froze for a second, then tried to laugh it off, calling it fake paperwork. But the man's confidence was unshakable. He had built his life on this land, and no HOA bylaw could erase that truth. The officers examined the papers carefully. Official stamps, signatures, and legal seals left no room for doubt. One officer even radioed the county clerk's office, confirming the deed. Slowly, their expressions shifted from polite interest to firm respect. Karen's face paled, but she didn't give up. She argued that the HOA had jurisdiction, insisting the rules applied to everyone. But the sheriff, now on scene, shook his head. "Not over a landowner, and certainly not over the man who owns the property you've been managing." Neighbors who once stayed silent began murmuring. Some even looked embarrassed, realizing they had blindly followed Karen's authority without ever checking the truth. Karen's power, built on confidence and intimidation, was crumbling in real time. The man didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He simply laid out the history of the land, how he had allowed the HOA to form on his property years ago as a favor, never once interfering. But instead of gratitude, Karen had turned it into a tool for control. "Every fine, every threat, every so-called rule you've enforced," he said, locking eyes with her, "has been on land you don't own." That sentence echoed across the neighborhood. Neighbors who had paid outrageous HOA fees suddenly realized they'd been misled. Frustration spread. Some shouted questions at Karen. Others looked to the man with a new respect. For the first time, Karen looked nervous. She had relied on fear and authority for so long, but now those very tools were slipping from her grasp. The sheriff addressed the crowd clearly. "By law, this HOA has no standing. It cannot enforce rules on land it doesn't own." The words hit harder than any argument. Karen's supporters backed away. Families who once followed her now wanted answers. And the man, steady as ever, produced one final document, a notice dissolving the HOA's operations on his property, effective immediately. Karen tried one last plea, her voice trembling, "You can't just end it." But the sheriff corrected her, "He can, and he just did." The neighborhood erupted in whispers, some relieved, others stunned. The man didn't gloat. He simply looked toward the lake, the same lake Karen had tried to ban him from, and smiled faintly. Justice had spoken, and it was quiet but absolute. The following week, the neighborhood felt lighter. Families gathered without fear of violations, kids played without worrying about HOA fines, and the lake once again became a place of peace. Karen, once the loudest voice in the community, had vanished from the spotlight. Her power was gone, replaced by the quiet respect neighbors now held for the true landowner. He never flaunted his victory, never rubbed it in, because to him, it wasn't about winning. It was about restoring fairness. Standing by the water, he thought back to that day. One phone call had sparked a chain reaction that ended an entire HOA. Not with shouting, not with chaos, but with truth, and that was the final twist in this unbelievable HOA story. If you love the drama, don't forget to like, subscribe, and drop a comment sharing your thoughts. It really helps this channel grow.